Hi there, welcome back to She Speaks Life, where we share our faith stories. I'm Jayme Elizabeth, and today I'm bringing you author and model Christine Handy. She has an incredible story to share with us about her journey through several medical issues, including breast cancer, that forced her to put her modeling career on hold, and how that was actually a catalyst to get rid of distractions and insecurities in exchange for a devotion to God like never before. Christine shares how she healed and trusted in God, and through it all gained new passions in life. She is on the board of a couple nonprofit organizations, including one called eBeauty that supports women through a wig exchange program, giving them encouragement and hope. She has a book called Walk Beside Me and is a motivational speaker to bring hope to others. I can't wait to share this inspirational story with you. So let's dive into our conversation. Hi, Christine. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I couldn't help but see on your website that your favorite vacation is where I came from, Southern California. And you said it's at the Montage in Laguna Beach. And I've been there so many times. So I love that you said that.
Oh, have you ever been there when they have a wedding?
I have not.
Oh,
But
it's
that's
so
beautiful.
so beautiful. I'm certainly planning on getting married again, and that is going to be my spot. I've already
There
had
you go.
many conversations with God about it. I'm like, I'm getting married, and that's where I'm getting married.
There you go. Yeah. And the pictures, I'm sure, will be
Oh,
stunning. Yeah.
thank
I
you.
love Laguna
We
Beach. It's
claim
my
that. We
favorite.
claim that. I don't even have a boyfriend, but we've already claimed it.
Yeah. Why not? Right? Plan it out. Oh, well, I gotta let the listeners know that you are a model and you're a mom of two sons. And I just would love for you to just start us out with what brought you to modeling and what kind of life that was for you or is for you.
Well, let me also say I do a few other things other than modeling, and I think it's important for the whole conversation. But I did start modeling when I was very young, and that's kind of been I would call myself a lifer. But I've become, because I wrote the book, a motivational speaker. I'm a mentor to many cancer patients, but also to young children. I also speak in prison, so I'm a mentor to some prisoners. Um, and I do have a big social media following. So I do try to teach and lead and inspire on social media because social media can be so toxic for so many of us. And so I try to be a light on that platform. But going back to the modeling, I did start when I was a child and, really at the dismay of my parents, they weren't pushing me into it. Often we hear how families or parents or push their children into businesses like modeling or pageantry. And my parents wanted to
Right.
have nothing to do with it. But because of my tenacity and some other manipulative skills, I suppose I have, which I guess have served me in this world of illness that I had to build a house in. I was persistent. I really did want to be a model at a young age. I was the pretty girl. People used to look at me and they go, "Oh, you're so pretty." And so that's what I thought my worth was, right? I mean, if you're constantly told you're so smart, what do? You go do really great things, right?
Sure.
If
Yeah.
people constantly tell you you're so pretty, what do? You want to be in front of a camera. You want to show off that beauty because you think that's what your worth is. And so that's kind of, I mean, looking back, right? It's so easy to discern that. So I started modeling and then I grew up in St. Louis and then I moved to Dallas to go to SMU, which was a bigger platform, bigger modeling agencies. And so I worked in Dallas and then I was hired by Elite to work in Barcelona after I graduated from college. And then I came back to Dallas and married somebody that I loved and had two children and continued to model. But it was at my first brush with death and my first illness at the age of 35 when I walked into the surgeon's office because they had to do a colon resection. And typically, colon resections are done preferably orthoscopically. That had nothing to do with what I wanted. That's just in general, that's how they're done. And so I said to the doctor, okay, can we make sure it's done orthoscopically? Because here's my modeling portfolio, and see all these ads for JCPenney and Dillard's and all these lingerie pictures and all these bathing shots, because that's kind of what I was good at. We can't mess up this stomach. And he was like, okay, okay. Now I've influenced, right, the surgeon to, be more, I guess, meticulous about not leaving me with scars. And so the next, well, interestingly enough, my sister was with me when I was signing all the paperwork at the surgeon's office. And there was one little question that said, oh, if in need of blood, will you sign the right to have blood put into your body? And I was like, I looked at my doctor and I said, why would I need to sign this? He said, well, first of all, you have to sign that or we cannot do surgery, any surgery really. And he said, but don't worry about it. There's no need. You will not need blood. Well, the next day went in for surgery and literally went in the bathroom of the hospital. And I just said a few prayers and I just said, okay, giving it to God. And I went into surgery feeling kind of peaceful about it. And I woke up from the surgery 6 hours later. And I had a blood bag and a port in my neck with a blood bag above my head in the recovery room. That was my second blood transfusion. And I was in such grotesque pain and I did not know what happened, that my teeth were chattering. My whole body was shaking in pain. And so I asked the nurse who was sitting next to me, I said, why am I in so much pain? And why is my body like convulsing? And she said, your doctor will be in here soon. I said, can you please give me like an ice chip or something? And she was like, no. She wouldn't tell me anything. She didn't tell me anything. And I was just in that room by myself, scared to death and not worried about the scars at that moment, obviously. But I put my hand down on my abdomen and I could feel the staples and the jagged edges and that my stomach was cut up wide open from hip to hip. And I had no idea what had happened. And so the doctor came to my hospital bed that night and he just put his head on my bed and just wept. He just said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And what happened was he had nicked a vein in one of my bones during surgery, which, it's an accident. It happens. But he in his mind kept thinking about those modeling pictures, right?
Right.
This is her career. And by the way, let me go back. We weren't dependent on my income. I didn't have to work. And so it wasn't like my livelihood and my children weren't going to eat if I wasn't working. And so, but it was an idol in my life. Like modeling was definitely an idol in my life. And so the doctor, I imagine, we never had this conversation, but I imagine that he was looking at those in his mind's eye, looking at those pictures going, I really want to open her up. She needs her stomach. And so like 30 minutes later, the blood was pooling and he couldn't find the source of it. And the anesthesiologist, who happened to be my next door neighbor, said to him, in an emergency, he said, you better open her up immediately or she's going to die. And so he did. He just, didn't move any. At that time, he couldn't move any muscles away. He just like wide open. Let's get to the source. And so I almost bled to death on the table. That was the first life-changing illness that I had. And after about a good year of trying to, your red blood cells take a long time to replenish after you have blood transfusions. And I had young children at the time. And so I was just exhausted a lot. And it took me about a year to get over that surgery. And then life kind of went back to normal. I wasn't working, modeling a lot. I just said, okay, well, I'm going to take this time because I don't know if I can work. I'm not going to go back to doing lingerie and bathing suits right now. And so I just started to, at that point, I started to depend on society's accolades more. Since I wasn't getting modeling accolades, I wasn't getting rewarded by modeling jobs. I was like yearning for society's accolades.
Sure.
And at no point did I stop and say to myself, when my friends were saying to me, would you like to go to a Bible study? I was saying to them, no, I've got a yoga class, because I wanted to like completely get my body back in shape. I was on a mission.
Yeah.
I was still that pretty girl.
Right.
That was my value.
Yeah. No, I can relate. Back in the day, my mom would be like, "Hey, do you want to go to this Christian conference with your sister-in-law and your sister?" And I'm like, "No, I'd rather go to Vegas." Like I was just like, that doesn't sound like fun. It's just so funny to look back on your spiritual growth and just be like,
Yeah.
or the lack of it, I should say, and just laugh at it.
Well,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I don't really blame you and I don't really blame me because, society pushes us into like, just turn on the TV, just look at the ads. Like that's what is pushing us to do certain things. And don't get me wrong, we have to take responsibility for our actions and we have to discern what's right for us or what's not right for us. But I wasn't doing anything wrong by
Mm-hmm.
working. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
doing anything wrong by being a model. I
Right.
wasn't doing anything wrong by going to yoga. But
Mm-hmm.
those things I did were my idols. Those were false idols
Right. It's the
because those
position
were
of your heart.
exactly, those
Yeah.
were the things I was meditating on
Right.
every day.
Yes. Yep.
So there's the difference. And I didn't really have a balance because I was in a marriage and I was in relationally in a very transactional world. Like in the modeling industry, it's like you do this for me and I'll do this for you. And so that's how I thought life worked. So relationally with friends, I thought, well, if I'm not pretty, they won't love me. If I'm not pretty, they won't want me in their group. If I'm not a certain way, then my husband won't think I'm worthy. And that was in my head, right? Those were the thoughts that I was telling myself.
Yes.
Those weren't phrases that they were sharing with me.
Right. Right.
But self-talk is critical to our
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem and to our decision making. And so fast forward a couple years, 4 or 5 years, I had a torn ligament in my right wrist. And I went to see a couple surgeons because it was torn all the way through. So I needed surgery. Again, I was a boy mom. And so we were carrying large equipment for sports. And I was doing a lot of yoga and handstands and back flips and all this sort of stuff that I loved to do. And I was a self-proclaimed athlete. Like I considered myself an athlete, although I wasn't a professional athlete, but I love to work out. I love to walk. I love to exercise. And I tore a ligament in my wrist. I didn't have an accident. It wasn't anything that happened right away, but it was kind of a degenerative thing. And so I went to meet with 3 surgeons and I picked the Stanford grad because he had the right pedigree. And I had surgery and he repaired the wrist. And 6 weeks after the surgery, they took the cast off. And about 3 days after the cast came off, my arm ballooned. My right arm looked like my thigh bone. Literally, it was so swollen, and the pain again. My body was kind of like going back to that shattering. My body was in so much pain and discomfort. And I called him on a Sunday. That was the morning I woke up with this pain, and I was embarrassed to call him. I felt a great deal of shame because I was taught as a woman that authority, I was in a way to respect authority more than myself. And I wasn't supposed to put men or people out of authority, right? People in positions of authority, I wasn't supposed to put them out. So to call them on a Sunday was really, I felt very much shame, which is a lie from Satan, right? And that's a lesson, that's a teaching that I think is out of place. It's out of, that doesn't, people don't teach that anymore, I hope. But so I called him on a Sunday and he said that I over-iced my arm. Well, I didn't go to Stanford. I don't have a medical degree. So I was like, okay, I over-iced my arm. I took the ice off, and unbeknownst to me, this was a pattern. He started to bully me. And it took several months of him bullying me, like outrageous bullying, for me to finally go see a second opinion. But by the time I saw a second doctor, this doctor had told me to go to physical therapy, and I was going to physical therapy almost every day. And every single day that I was going to physical therapy, I was breaking every bone in my wrist because I had an undiagnosed infection in my arm from surgery that he knew about, but misdiagnosed it in the beginning, undiagnosed it in the end. And so by the time I finally saw a second opinion, my arm was totally destroyed. And going back to the self-esteem and the thoughts about self-awareness and self-love, those weren't happening in my life. And so what was happening was, here is this man who is in authority. He knows more than me. That's what I'm telling myself. He knows more than me. And then I had other people in my life reinforcing that. They would say, oh, he's the best doctor in Dallas. Of course he knows what he's doing. Okay. And I even had other voices in my life saying, you're a hypochondriac. You're in the doctor all the time. So I was like, gosh, I mean, I've over-iced it. I've moved it too much. I'm a hypochondriac. I'm not respecting authority. I'm causing all of this, right? Because I didn't have the self-esteem that said, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm worthy of having answers here. I'm worthy of
Yeah.
not being in this pain. And so, but I kept making decisions based on a terrible self-esteem, which continued to hurt me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. The insecurity gave you that lack of confidence to stand up for yourself and go, okay, I'm getting this checked out. There's
Yeah.
something really wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you modeling during this time? Did it interrupt your work?
Yeah. It definitely interrupted it because I had casts on for almost a year. So I had different casts on and I couldn't use my right arm. And so I finally found a second opinion in another doctor. And I ended up flying up to New York City because there's a hospital up there that is the best orthopedic hospital in the country. And they took the botched job. What I mean by that is a lot of times when you have a doctor that destroys a part of your body or something inside of you, a lot of
Yeah.
doctors don't want to touch it for liability.
Right.
But I found a really incredible doctor in New York, and he said, come up to New York. I'll see you. I saw him, and he fused my arm. He took all those broken bones out. He took all the infection out, and he replaced it with cadaver bones, a cadaver Achilles tendon. So he basically rebuilt my wrist, but fused it, meaning I don't have a functional wrist. And so I'm flying back to Dallas after my surgery, and I'm like, wow, I was this like beautiful model. And now 6 years, 6 years into this stuff, I have this massive scar on my abdomen and I have a fused arm. And I was this self-proclaimed athlete. I can't work out. I can't use my right arm. I have no idea how to take care of my children. How am I going to feed them? How am I going to cook? How am I going to drive? And I go back to New York 6 weeks later for my post-arm fusion appointment. And I'm in the hotel in New York City. And for months, I wasn't able to use my right arm in the shower. So I'd have my right arm outside of the shower and I'd pour liquid soap over my shoulder and just let that wash down my body. And in this hotel, I called down to the front desk and I said, do you guys have any liquid soap? And they were like laughing at me. And so I took this bar of soap with this massive cast outside of the shower. And I was like, I'm going to try to get clean because I feel dirty. I just got off the airplane and I'm washing my body and I feel a lump in my left breast. And I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I have no family history of breast cancer. I have no reason to think that this is a breast cancer lump, but I kind of in the back of my mind was like, at this point, life was a mess. And I thought, if anything else is going to happen to me, that's kind of the story of my life at this stage. And so 5 days later, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer.
Wow. So the way I'm kind of grasping like how you were as a Christian, would it be suffice to say, did you compartmentalize God? Like
Yes.
God was okay to enter this part of my life, but not this part of my life?
Yeah, I mean, God was always present in my life, but when it was convenient.
Right. Yeah.
Or, when it was like an event. So if there was an event that raised money for a certain charity or for a certain church or something that I believed in and my friends were going, I was all in.
Yeah.
But personal time with God was very limited and he wasn't first. My own might was first. My husband was first. My modeling was above me. My children were above me. And the order was out of order. It was chaos, right? Because when things are out of order, when God is not up here, your life is chaos.
Right. So when you get the news of the breast cancer, was that just like you're hitting rock bottom to go, okay, Lord, like have your way. I'm done trying to do it my way?
No, my rock bottom was, please take me. Like, I want to die. I could not wait to die. Yeah. I was like, I'm done. I have no value in this world. I've used all the resources with my children, with my friends. They've taken me to physical therapy for a year. I've now had 2 or 3 surgeries on my arm. I've used friends to come to New York City with me, to travel with me. And I thought, nobody's going to show up for me. I cannot offer them anything. I'm not beautiful anymore. I'm about to lose my hair. I'm about to go through 28 rounds of chemo, and I've got no spirit inside of me. And nobody's going to show up for me because I have no value. So I just couldn't wait to die.
Wow. Okay. So take us through, how did you get out of that? I mean, that's
By the
the dark
grace of
of the
God.
darkest, feeling that hopelessness. I can't
Oh,
imagine.
the
Yeah.
despair was unimaginable. Yeah. So one of my sons was in boarding school at the time, and he was going to come home that first weekend after my diagnosis. And in the meantime, my friends knew, like, it was wildfire. Like, I was calling people, my husband was calling people, and they all came over and they were like, okay, we will never forsake you. God will never forsake you. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, I did not believe them. I thought, you guys are going to head out of here. I mean, the minute I lose my hair, you're out the door. And that's what I believed. And so my son was supposed to come home from boarding school that first weekend. And in the meantime, my friends started showing up every day. Like, they were living by their word. And I had even had one friend who said to me, no, you're my Bible study. I'm not even going to Bible study this whole semester because you're my Bible study. Every Wednesday that I was supposed to be in Bible study, I'm coming here instead. And so my son got in trouble in boarding school, so he wasn't able to come home. And then he was supposed to come home the next weekend. Now I'm still in this despair. I'm still in this like victim mentality of I'm just going to die. I'm not going to do treatment. I'm not going to fight for my life. And I was very vocal about it. And it's because that's how I felt. Like, I wasn't looking for attention. I just was like, guys, like, I know
Yeah.
that my life is over. Like, it's done. I've had too many tragedies. And I'm in pain. Like, I'm in physical pain in my arm. It was terrible. And so, and when you're in pain, it's hard to make really, really rational and important decisions when you're in really distressful pain. And so, again, my friends kept showing up and they kept saying to me, no, we are the hands and the feet of the Lord. We will not leave your side. And I just didn't believe them. And so my son got in trouble 3 weekends in a row, was not able to come home. And by the time he was able to come home, which is about a month, my friends had taught me, and I finally believed them because they showed up for 30 days in a row. I finally believed that they would show up for me, that they weren't going to forsake me. And in the meantime, they were coming over, and one of my friends, because I was diagnosed with breast cancer October 1st. And so that's like Halloween, right? So I have ghosts and goblins in my house, and my boys like all this like, skeletons and all this like creepy stuff. And so my friends came in my house and they said, oh, we're taking all of the stuff that doesn't represent life away, and we're going to replace it. Like, one of my friends took me out for the day, and the other friend came in and replaced everything that did not represent life. And she brought plants, and even my dog bowl had skulls and crossbones on it. They took it out. They got me a new dog bowl. And by the time I get home, everything around me was representing life. And they said to me, you have to meditate on life. You cannot meditate on death. And even what you look around and see is critical. And so even if you don't think these things matter, these skulls and crossbones and graves, for Halloween, they do matter. And so they took all of that out, and my son came home. And by the time he came home, I was like, you know what? My life might have some meaning. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to spend the time, these next 15 months in chemotherapy, when there's going to be a lot of alone time and all this other time with my friends, and figure out what this whole God thing is about, like really about.
Right.
And so literally, like, even on the darkest days when I did not know if I would wake up the next day because I was so sick, I was already depleted when I went into chemotherapy because I had a year of an infection in my arm that was undiagnosed. And so my body was sick. Like, I was so sickly. I was like 90 some odd pounds. And there were many days where I got so sick from chemotherapy. My white blood count was so low that I wasn't sure I was going to wake up the next day. And on those days where I was violently ill and laying on the floor in the bathroom and by myself and crying out to God, I stopped meditating on what other people could do for me or what I could do for them. And I stopped meditating on the outcome because all I knew was today. God's strength and God's courage was for today, and God's hope was for tomorrow. Yeah. So the courage I had was for today. I wasn't going to worry about tomorrow. Whether I woke up or not, I was now planted. I was God's child, and wherever he took me, I was all in. It was like that major shift, that major paradigm shift. And thank God, but I was also feeding my soul on Hillsong, the song Oceans. I was feeding my soul on everywhere I
Worship.
looked, there
Yeah.
was scriptures. Like one of my friends came in and took 250 sticky notes that had scriptures on it. She put them everywhere. She put them all over my house.
So
So
good.
what they were feeding me the scriptures, right? And they were feeding me how to live as a child of God. I was listening to podcasts that were life-giving. I wasn't watching Bravo Entertainment TV anymore. I wasn't watching E! News. That stuff was gone out of my life. Like comparing my life to others, people, or to looking at celebrities as they were some sort of models to the world was gone. I wasn't meditating on any of that. And I wasn't fixated on materialism anymore. Like my bags that I coveted, they weren't keeping me cozy at night. They weren't helping me. And so when I got rid of those thoughts, and I really took my thoughts captive. And anytime I would say to myself, you're not worthy, you're disgusting, you have a fused arm, you're now disabled. Who would care about you? Who would ever love you? Your breasts are now gone. Who would love you? When I started to say that, I would stop it immediately and say, that is a lie from Satan, and that's unacceptable. And I would replace those phrases with different phrases. God is let go and let God. I'm a child of God. I am worthy. I am beautifully and wonderfully made in his image. And I didn't necessarily believe those thoughts in the beginning. But man, if you keep stopping those negative thoughts and you keep replacing it with life-giving thoughts, you will start to have a solid self-esteem. And I rebuilt my life on faith, and that was concrete. Like the life that I lived with materialism and this transactional life and based on external beauty, that was sand, and I was sinking fast. So that life was over for me.
It takes sometimes some things to happen in our life to realize that those worldly things will just fade away. And what a great group of friends you had, and how your community really saved your life. I mean, this is just such
Yes.
a great example for us to know, like, friends and community, like, it's important, it's essential to wrap ourselves around other people and to encourage us and build us up. You just might be saving somebody from where they're at. I have to share too that our fight is just, it's not a fight for nothing. There is victory. There is a reward on the other side of it. And I can't help to see what you're doing now with everything that you're involved in. You are a board member of eBeauty, where you support and help other women get wigs who
Yeah.
cannot afford it when they lose their hair through chemotherapy. And you're, an advocate, educator, humanitarian. You do so much for others and building other people's self-esteem up
Yeah.
because you've been there. And, when we've been there, then we know how to spread hope and encouragement and be selfless,
Yeah.
in this world when we just go through those difficult, dark times.
We do have an obligation, I do believe, as women to cheer each other on. And when I see women being catty and tearing each other apart, or being in a world where they think there's competition amongst each other, it makes me really sad. And so I kind of shout from the rooftops in any platform that I'm capable of being on, and just say, it's not about the competition. It's about the cheerleading each other on. And until you realize that, you're never going to get what you need. The substance comes from keeping each other on the right track, right? And again, it's not self-serving. It's actually, it can often be, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to do these sorts of things, but the reward is seeing other people's lives change. And look what my friends did
That's
for me,
right.
right? They gave up their resources, they gave up their time, they gave up their own families to keep mine. And they said to me along the way, they said, at some point, we're going to let you fly, right? And when you fly, it'll be your responsibility to share this story. And I take that very seriously. And by the way, it's a privilege. Like if we can be vulnerable enough to say, this is how I did it wrong and this is how I do it now, take what you want, right? If you want that life, the life before, go for it. If you want this life, go for it. But if I'm vulnerable enough and say, this is how I did it wrong, maybe somebody will do it differently and they won't have to go through everything that I went through, then it's worth it.
So true. Okay, let's talk about your book called Walk Beside Me. It's a novel. So you took maybe a fictional character, but added your story. Explain what you did there.
Yeah, so it's a fictional depiction of my life, and it's called Walk Beside Me. And I changed, like I have 2 sons, but I put in the book I have a son and a daughter. And I changed the cities. And, the people that I leaned on during that time, they were all like, you can use my name, it's all fine. But I just wanted to kind of cover everybody from, just a standpoint of anonymity, just everybody's name didn't need to be out there. And so we did change the names, and my name in the book is Willow, but that's always been my nickname. So I kind of like having that name. And my book is actually being made into a film called Willow, the feature film.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, I think that it's important for a film to show what kind of community women can create and how life-giving that can be. Especially right now on the after effects of COVID, we're now seeing how lonely people can get when they're isolated. And so I think it's important to see that the way that people can live by, caring each other. And I'm excited about the film, and my book was published like 6 years ago, and in fact, somebody posted on their social media today. And I just love that people see, the growth in God and also the growth in friendships and just in the growth in self-esteem, because without a self-esteem, we will not make good decisions.
Yeah. And the way we get that is through God's word and what he says who we are, right?
Who says we are.
Yeah.
Amen. I love that.
All right. You want to give us a takeaway here that the listener can ponder on?
When I feel down and I feel kind of broken, my first thought is let go and let God. And that phrase can carry you to the next moment, right? And sometimes it's moment to moment. And sometimes I have to get on my knees and I have to just be in, prayer with God, just saying, okay, I don't understand this. I'm not able to do this in my own strength. Please do this for me. But if we just remember that, let go and let God, that really can help you throughout your days.
I love that. Okay, where can people reach you and connect with you and get involved in what you're doing?
So I'm on most social media platforms. I don't really do TikTok, but Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, I'm all Christine Handy 1. And my website is christinehandy.com. And then my book is Walk Beside Me. And that's sold most places. I usually feed people to Amazon just because it's easy. But it's at Barnes & Noble and Target and Books A Million. It's at most book retailers.
Cool. Okay. And do you have a release date for the film, or is it still in the beginning stages in the works?
Well, it's actually been in the works since 2018, but we had to pull it back during COVID, which set us back a couple years, but it's being re-engaged right now. So it's been very exciting.
Good. Well, I know it's going to be tremendously blessed by God. Thank you so much for listening today, and I trust that God has encouraged you through this story. Did you know this podcast is on YouTube? Hop on there and subscribe, and you can see a live recording of each episode. And for more information on this ministry and to access free downloads, please visit my website at jaymeelizabeth.com. That's JAYME Elizabeth.com. And let's connect beyond this podcast by going to my Instagram handle, Jayme Elizabeth, She Speaks Life, or Facebook. Until next time, my friend, I hope God reveals himself through your own life story.